In a town that once felt untouched by darkness, 5 names became the heartbeat of a mystery that refuses to fade. Claire Henson, the young dreamer who vanished after a late-night shift. Thomas Gray, the dependable mechanic whose truck was left behind like a marker. Margaret Lewis, the beloved teacher whose belongings were arranged on stone like a ritual. Pike, the college student whose visit to Ridgewood ended in silence. And Helen Brooks, the retiree whose evening walk became her last. Their stories, known as the Ridgewood Vanishings, remain unsolved, an eerie puzzle that continues to haunt Ridgewood's every shadow. Ridgewood was the kind of place people often forgot existed, tucked away between rolling hills and a quiet stretch of river that seemed to shield it from the chaos of the outside world. Neighbors waved to one another, doors were rarely locked, and the streets emptied after dark, leaving only the sound of crickets and the occasional bark of a dog. It was a town that prided itself on its safety, the kind of community where generations stayed rooted, convinced nothing truly terrible could happen there. But in the summer of 1998, that illusion shattered, and the name Ridgewood would forever carry a shadow that no one could explain. Claire Henson had been a familiar face at the town's only diner, a modest place that smelled of coffee and frying bacon no matter the time of day. At 22, she had dreams of leaving Ridgewood, perhaps moving to the city where she could pursue art. But for now, she worked late shifts to save money. On the night she disappeared, everything seemed perfectly ordinary. She left the diner just after midnight, waved goodbye to the cook, and drove off in her small blue sedan. She never made it home. The next morning, Claire's parents reported her missing when she didn't return, something entirely out of character for her. By noon, deputies located her car on a narrow dirt road just outside of town. The discovery raised more questions than it answered. The car was in working condition, parked neatly on the roadside. The keys were still in the ignition, the driver's door locked. On the passenger seat sat her purse untouched, containing her wallet, cash, and identification. It looked as though she had simply vanished into thin air. Investigators combed the area surrounding the car. They searched the roadside, the nearby woods, and even dragged sections of the river, but no sign of Claire appeared. What disturbed them most was the lack of evidence. There were no tire tracks other than her own, no footprints leading away, no signs of struggle. It was as though she had parked the car, stepped out, and dissolved into the night. The strangeness of the scene quickly unsettled both law enforcement and the community, sparking rumors that spread faster than facts. In small towns, mysteries are rarely kept private. Within days, whispers filled Ridgewood's grocery stores, barbershops, and church gatherings. Some said Claire had staged her disappearance to start a new life, though those who knew her insisted she was not the type. Others speculated about a stalker, someone who had quietly followed her until the right moment. A darker idea even surfaced, that something in the woods had taken her, though no one could explain what that meant. Fear began to sink into the hearts of Ridgewood residents who had never locked their doors before. What had once been an ordinary town now carried a chilling story that refused to fade. Claire Henson's disappearance marked the first crack in Ridgewood's peaceful surface, a crack that would only grow wider as time went on. Weeks following, Claire Henson's disappearance were filled with endless searches, interviews, and speculation. Ridgewood had never seen a case like this before, and the sheriff's department was overwhelmed by the pressure of finding answers. Volunteers combed through thick forests, dogs were brought in to track any possible scent, and helicopters hovered above the winding riverbanks. For days, the community pushed forward with determination. But as time stretched on and no trace of Claire emerged, hope began to fade. The town that once felt safe and predictable now carried a constant sense of unease, as if something sinister was watching from the shadows. Then, nearly 3 months later, a discovery jolted Ridgewood back into fear. 2 hikers unfamiliar with the case were exploring a deep section of the forest far beyond the main trails. Beneath a tall oak tree, they noticed a pile of clothing neatly folded on the ground. At first it looked harmless, almost like someone had left them behind after a swim. But when the hikers looked closer, they realized the clothes matched the description of what Claire had been wearing the night she vanished. On top of the folded stack was a small silver locket engraved with her initials. It was an unmistakable belonging. The scene disturbed investigators as much as it intrigued them. The clothes were clean, free from dirt or damage, despite lying in the woods for months. There were no signs of animals disturbing the area, no footprints surrounding the tree, and no indication of how the items had arrived there. Even stranger, there was still no sign of Claire herself. No remains, no hair, no blood. It looked more like an offering than evidence, carefully placed in a way that seemed deliberate. Whoever was responsible appeared to be leaving a message, though its meaning remained unclear. News of the discovery spread quickly through Ridgewood. For some, it was confirmation that Claire had met a tragic fate. For others, it suggested something more twisted, that someone was playing with the town, keeping her memory alive in the most unsettling way possible. Rumors grew louder, ranging from theories about a serial predator to talk of ritualistic activity in the woods. Parents forbade their children from wandering far from home, and longtime residents admitted they no longer felt the same comfort walking down Ridgewood's quiet streets at night. The investigation, instead of narrowing, expanded into confusion. Detectives searched the surrounding forest for weeks, hoping the folded clothing was a breadcrumb leading to answers, but nothing else was found. The woods offered silence, as if swallowing its secrets. Theories spiraled in every direction. Some thought Claire had been lured into the forest by someone she trusted, while others believed she had been taken against her will and her belongings left behind as a cruel reminder. But every lead ran cold, every theory lacked evidence. With each passing day, the mystery became heavier, pressing down on Ridgewood like a fog that refused to lift. Claire's folded clothes beneath the oak tree became the single most haunting piece of the puzzle, a symbol of how close the truth seemed, yet how far out of reach it remained. 5 years passed, and the memory of Claire Henson's disappearance lingered like an open wound in Ridgewood. The case had gone cold, but the strange discovery of her neatly folded clothes under the oak tree had never been forgotten. Residents tried to move on, but an undercurrent of fear still rippled through the town. People locked their doors earlier, avoided the dirt road where her car had been found, and whispered her name with caution, as if saying it too loudly might invite the same fate. Then in the fall of 2003, Ridgewood's fragile calm shattered again. Thomas Gray, a 30-year-old mechanic known for his reliability and quiet personality, failed to return home one evening. His wife grew concerned when hours passed without a word, and by morning she reported him missing. Almost immediately, the search brought back memories of Claire. The unease deepened when Thomas's truck was located on the exact same dirt road where Claire's sedan had once been found. Just like before, the vehicle was parked neatly, keys in the ignition. On the hood of the truck sat his wristwatch and wallet, placed deliberately as though arranged for someone to find. Investigators felt a chilling familiarity as they examined the scene. It was too precise, too similar to be coincidence. The belongings were undisturbed. The ground around the truck showed no signs of a struggle, and there were no tracks other than Thomas's own tire marks. For the second time in 5 years, a Ridgewood resident had vanished without a trace, leaving behind possessions carefully displayed in a way that defied explanation. The echoes of Claire's case became unavoidable, and fear returned to the town stronger than before. The search for Thomas consumed Ridgewood. Deputies retraced every path, diving into rivers, combing forests, and setting up roadblocks, but nothing emerged. Even more unsettling was the realization that Thomas's disappearance mirrored Claire's in nearly every detail. The public couldn't ignore it. Someone or something was repeating a pattern. Whispers of a predator grew louder, and some residents swore the town was cursed. Theories spiraled wildly. Was the same person responsible for both vanishings? Had Claire and Thomas been chosen deliberately, or were they simply unlucky victims caught in a ritualistic cycle no one understood? Fear turned into paranoia. The dirt road where both vehicles had been discovered earned a grim nickname, the Ridgewood Stretch. Parents warned their children never to venture near it, and locals avoided it even during daylight. Still, the sheriff's department couldn't provide answers. They had no evidence linking the two cases, no suspect, no explanation for the careful placement of belongings. It was as though Ridgewood had been marked by an invisible hand, and law enforcement was powerless against it. As months passed, the search for Thomas grew cold, just as Claire's had. Families in town began to live with a gnawing awareness. This wasn't just bad luck. Ridgewood was caught in something far darker, something that seemed to strike at random, leaving behind chilling symbols that mocked any attempt at understanding. The town, once ordinary and safe, was now marked as a place of unsolved terror. By the time Thomas Gray's case went cold, Ridgewood was no longer the same town it had once been. The charm of its quiet streets and close-knit community was overshadowed by unease, as though a veil of darkness had settled over every corner. Families moved away, businesses struggled, and children grew up hearing whispered warnings about the Ridgewood Stretch. For a while, nothing happened, and some dared to believe the nightmare was over. But the calm proved to be only an interlude before the terror returned. In the spring of 2007, another name was added to Ridgewood's growing list of missing persons. This time it was a schoolteacher, Margaret Lewis, known for her kindness and dedication to her students. One evening after leaving a staff meeting, she never arrived home. The next morning, her car was found in a chillingly familiar spot, on the same dirt road where Claire and Thomas had last been seen. Her handbag and car keys weren't hidden inside the vehicle. Instead, they were placed carefully on a flat stone a few steps into the forest, arranged as if part of a display. Investigators, who had hoped the earlier cases were isolated tragedies, were now forced to face the truth. A pattern was undeniably unfolding. The placement of Margaret's belongings echoed the ritualistic precision seen in the earlier cases. It was as though someone wanted to ensure the connection was unmistakable. The sheriff's department attempted to contain the panic, but the news spread faster than ever before. Newspapers from outside Ridgewood picked up the story, dubbing the mysterious disappearances the Ridgewood Vanishings. The town's reputation changed overnight, drawing unwanted attention from both journalists and amateur investigators eager to uncover the truth. Despite renewed efforts, the search for Margaret turned up nothing. The woods were combed for weeks, helicopters scoured the tree lines, and divers explored every bend of the river. Yet not a single clue emerged beyond the carefully placed belongings. Some investigators began to suggest that the perpetrator wasn't just hiding evidence, but deliberately controlling the narrative, leaving behind clues meant to torment those searching. Every detail seemed staged to remind the town of its helplessness. Over the following years, the pattern repeated itself 2 more times. In 2010, a college student named Pike disappeared while visiting relatives in Ridgewood. In 2012, a retiree named Helen Brooks vanished during her evening walk. Both cases shared the same grim signature: vehicles abandoned near the Ridgewood Stretch, personal belongings arranged with disturbing precision, and no sign of the victims themselves. The disappearances seemed to strike across different ages and backgrounds, leaving no clear motive, no consistent profile, only the eerie repetition of a ritual that defied logic. By now, the Ridgewood Stretch was infamous. Locals avoided it entirely, treating it as cursed ground. Even travelers passing through the area reported an unsettling silence that seemed to hang over the road, a silence heavy with the weight of unanswered questions. Law enforcement remained powerless, chasing shadows with no tangible evidence to follow. Ridgewood, once an ordinary town, had become a place defined by fear. The repeated vanishings carved it into the pages of unsolved crime history, each case deepening the sense that whatever haunted the town was not finished. The question was no longer if it would happen again, but when. Decades had passed since the night Claire Henson vanished, but Ridgewood never recovered. The town became a hollow version of itself, living in the shadow of unanswered questions and unrelenting fear. The Ridgewood Stretch, once nothing more than a dirt road leading into the forest, was now a symbol of dread. Few dared to drive down it, and those who did often described a suffocating stillness, as though the very air carried the weight of the missing. Houses stood empty, businesses closed, and families fled, leaving Ridgewood to shrink into a shell haunted by its own reputation. By the time the 5th disappearance was added to the grim list, the town was marked forever. Newspapers labeled it a place where people vanish. Paranormal enthusiasts spun theories of ancient curses tied to the land, while others insisted a calculating predator had stalked Ridgewood for decades. But despite endless speculation, not a single person was ever arrested. No bodies were ever recovered. Not a single shred of physical evidence connected the victims. The belongings, always carefully arranged, remained the only link, a chilling reminder that someone had planned every detail with precision. What disturbed investigators most was the deliberate silence of the perpetrator. Most killers left mistakes, trails of evidence, or motives to uncover, but the Ridgewood Vanishings defied every pattern. The victims ranged in age, gender, and background, suggesting randomness. Yet the ritualistic placement of their possessions suggested purpose. The message behind the displays was never deciphered, and perhaps that was the cruelest element of all. It was not just the loss of life, but the absence of answers that haunted Ridgewood. Theories multiplied over the years. Some believed the disappearances were the work of a local who knew the woods too well, a hunter who had mastered the art of leaving no trace. Others speculated it was the work of a cult, each victim a sacrifice to some unknown cause, their belongings arranged as offerings. More chilling still were the whispers of something unearthly, a force beyond comprehension that lured people into the forest and kept them forever. No theory ever gained proof, but each carried its own weight, adding to the legend that Ridgewood had become. Today, the Ridgewood cases remain one of the most baffling unsolved mysteries in true crime history. Families of the missing still live with the torment of uncertainty, clinging to the faintest hope while knowing the truth may never surface. For outsiders, the story is a haunting tale told in hushed tones, a reminder that some places are marked by darkness that cannot be explained or escaped. For those who lived in Ridgewood, it is not just a story, but a wound that never closed. The Ridgewood Vanishings stand as a chilling reminder that evil does not always reveal its face. Sometimes it hides in plain sight, sometimes it lingers in silence, and sometimes it leaves behind only small tokens of lives stolen without explanation. The dirt road remains untouched, stretching into the forest like an unanswered question, daring anyone brave enough to walk it to face what Ridgewood has always known, that some mysteries are not meant to be solved, only remembered.